Hi, I'm Shayna. I'm joined by three incredible women who have achieved a lot at all different levels of women's hockey. So, who better to introduce each of them than themselves? So, I'll start with Emma.
Yeah, I'm Emma. I currently play for the Toronto Six, in the NWHL. This will be my second season playing with the Six. And then prior to that, I played a year in Sweden and then a year overseas in China, in the Canadian League. So ever since graduating, I've played kind of all over the world. And it's been nice, and I've been really fortunate for hockey to take me to those places. And prior to that, I played at Quinnipiac University. So I could talk about hockey all day, so I'm excited to be here.
Karell.
Yeah, I was going to say I can go next if anything. I'm Karell Émard. I play currently for the PWHPA in Montreal. I've played there now. It's our third year starting up. And before that, I played for the Les Canadiens in the CWHL. We played against Émard for a year, I think, maybe. And then prior to that, I was playing at St. Lawrence University. And in between the two, I also coached at Colgate University for 3 years. So yeah, it doesn't bring me, or I guess it's showing how old I am now. And I currently also work for SportLogic, who is a advanced analytics company. So really happy to be here and to be part of this conference.
Neat. I guess that leaves me. And so, yeah, please don't talk about age. My name is Colleen Coyne. I played my college hockey at University of New Hampshire. I think it was 113 years ago. And then I was a member of the U.S. Women's National Olympic teams from 1992 to 1998. And from there, I got into tech after my playing days, and just sort of recently got back into the game itself. I stayed in hockey technology. I worked for Sparks. Some of you might be familiar with the skate sharpener. I worked there in the early days, more recently at a hockey analytics hardware company. And yeah, I'm the new president now for the Boston Pride and the NWHL. And I'm excited to be back in the game and to see where it's going. And this type of conference and bringing this type of information to the forefront is just amazing. So I said it on LinkedIn. I'll say it publicly to all of you who pulled this together. Just thank you from all of us, I think, because it's this type of information that's going to continue to move our sport forward.
So, I wanted to start by asking each of you this, and Colleen, I'll start with you. How much do you think a player needs to care about their data below the surface level of, the box score stats?
Yeah, so I was just thinking about this, and like I feel like I feel like this is a coaching thing, right? Yes, you want to know and it's the coaches that should sort of collect the data and then, filter it into meaningful sound bites for the players, just if they don't have time, right? So at the elite level, you're training on your body, you're working, breaking down video, but the individual data, I think it would be really helpful to each individual athlete to be able to come back to them and say, hey, check this out. When you're shooting from this angle, here's your scoring percentage, here's your on net percentage. When you're shooting from here, here it is. So it gives you some context on the things that you can work on, the things that you're strong at, and it just kind of delivers it in a bite size. As an athlete myself, I mean, I was like pretty obsessed. So going back to when I was playing, there wasn't much data at all, right? So things that I was thinking about was like the depth of my sharpening, like, is this going to slow me down? Is this going to speed me up? So that's sort of like the really, really high level stuff that I was thinking about, because all this other stuff just wasn't available. But I think, it's probably based on the individual athlete, but I think the data itself, regardless of how they get it, is going to be super important as the skill level just continues to climb.
If I can follow up on that quick. So how much has the data differed for you from your playing days until now? What kind of data were you getting post game that, back when you were playing?
How much have you guys been able to find? There was really nothing. It was like shots on goal, right? Yeah. And plus minus. But even that stuff isn't archived anywhere. I don't think you could find it if you wanted to.
You'd have to look like at individual tournaments probably and whatnot and search to get it. And I'd say that even now, Colleen, like we do have a certain stats that's available on the women's side, but it's not nearly as in depth as on the men's side. And I think that the data point itself are now more and more new companies are trying to also involve the women's side, but this is a huge kind of gap that we need to keep on pushing and keep on bringing to our game as well too. I'd say that like whatever you were getting back then, or the lack of, for probably our career in college, and Emma, you can correct me if I'm wrong, our coaches were kind of getting into the stats world, but yet I remember Chris Wells like being a fan and wrote a couple articles on Hockey Magazine with Shockers, our stats teachers over there and whatnot. But it was the first kind of time that I was exposed to stats itself, and even the like the percentages of turnovers or areas in turnovers that, you know, can impact actually on the scoring chance on the opposite way or where they are. But even then, it wasn't necessarily something that I necessarily believed in, because to me, it was always missing a context, or there was some part that was missing, which is, okay, what I saw in that split second and the decision I made with 4 other girls coming at me in that moment, right? So I think data is now coming to a good enough bit of it, but the women's side needs it even more, I think, and needs to be provided with the good enough stats to be able to evaluate the game itself.
And Karell, forgive me, when were you playing? Like, when were your college days?
I graduated in 12, so not too long ago, but still
I'm just,
kinda...
but that's important to know, because even just, you know, whatever that is, 7 years.
Yeah, it's true.
You know, we were still lacking. So it's moving in the right direction thanks to all these people. And I think that that's a huge step forward.
Yeah. And I failed to mention, but I work for Instat Hockey, which as many of you guys might know, it's an analytics company. And we're making huge moves right now. I mean, I got brought on in January, and it's kind of been my goal to, you know, tap into the women's and girls market. And we've done a great job with the men so far, and we're continuing to grow. We're a pretty new company. I think we've only been around for 6 years in hockey. So, you know, these are big growing years for us, but, you know, we're really tapping into the women and girls market. And next year, like, we're going to have, you know, the majority of youth girls and college girls and pro girls on the platform. So, you know, we signed the NWHL teams for next year, which I think, you know, you kind of start, you know, with pro, and then we're able to get, you know, college. That's huge for college. I think you guys would agree that college teams, you know, take that stuff probably the most serious right now in the girls game and the women's game. And I think it's really going to help us grow our sport and our game, because yeah, like you guys said, like that data library doesn't exist right now in the women's game. And it's like a huge factor in, you know, player development and teams developing and leagues developing. So I'm excited about it, as you guys all are as well.
So, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's huge that in vast majority, people should have access at a level of stats for sure. And then as you grow and as you get to the professional levels, having that in-depth one or granularity is also, I guess, what coaches are looking forward to get and also need in order to develop those players too. So it's huge. It's a good step for sure for our game.
So I want to ask both of you, since you're both currently playing, how much do you think a player should care about their data below the surface level? And how do you think on the other side, coaches and management should, and how should it be delivered to players?
I can go first if you want, Emma. I know I've received like the Instat stuff back when I was in the CW. We would receive the PDFs form in emails and stuff like that. And I also have access to the platform, but our clips itself, when I went to that, and I know it was somewhat useful. I liked watching my clips back then, but I just didn't know how to use it. And now that I did the whole coaching, and then that I'm in this world with SportLogic and stuff, I see, you know, skills coach using it a lot in players development. And then, as Colleen mentioned, it different angles to, I mean, teach a player to simply take one more step because his XG value on that shot is way higher than another. And also being able to pinpoint, we were talking about data points, and obviously we track over 300 and plus metrics and whatnot, which is extreme, which is why the NHL is using us as much as they do. But the fact that they can actually pull any type of turnovers or chances off of different systems or place area, off a rush, off a cycle, off of anything, we're actually trying to provide a tool that can, like, I'd say help the coaches or reduce their time watching video, in a sense of they watch for 4 hours, they break it down themselves. Now we're trying to like help them. Here's, you want to watch all your power plays for the last 100 games or whatever. Here they are. Here are they come. You want it with this one player. Here how it is too. So these event points, I think, are great and a good additions to the data that is also collected, in a sense that a coach can just use it, turn it around, and then work with a player and not actually show him everything, but digest it down to a sense that here's what I'm seeing. Here are your tendencies. And this is why, from last year to this year, you're maybe not as much of a scorer than you used to be. You're on the outside peripheral, and we can see it. It's an eye test too, right? It's, as a coach, as a player, these things. I think the data and the stats are just there to guide you, or to allow you to have the unbiased kind of view on things, to make you realize, like, oh, I really thought this guy was turning over the puck 100 times, but yet the numbers are not necessarily seeing it. But the turnovers he created were dramatic, or you had a bias because he did that a couple of times, or she did that. So I think that if it's used in the right ways by coaches, it's very, very good. I do think that players do not need to see as much as we actually track, because I think it becomes an overwhelming thing. And then it could also become, in a sense of, like, let's say we track loose puck recovery. Okay. So I want to just chip the puck and recover it, so I get more points in that stats or whatever that is. That is not something a player should be also looking and doing either, right? So there's always, like, depending on how you're reading into it, how you're taking it, and what you want to do with it, I think is a major case. So it should provide you enough tools to have an insight to then be able to teach better. So I think it's a combination and a true balance between a coach and the perception of the stats and the data that's actually being tracked that needs to be combined at all time. I don't think a robot should tell you what to do. I think there's a gut feeling. There's more that needs to be involved in those, for sure. Sorry, Emma. I just went at it.
That's awesome. But no, I agree. I think, as players, I think we love it, but we're also, we're playing.
We're challenging it
now, yeah. And we know more about our game. I think it's, some of the younger girls and women that, they probably don't need to look at the numbers as much, definitely. No. And yeah, I think it's great for the coaches, and I think it's great for the players to have access to that if they want to watch their shifts and stuff like that. But I think when it comes down to the numbers, I think it's just the best thing for the coaches to have, and then continue to guide their players and kind of figure out, the different roles and strengths and weaknesses that those players are having. But I mean, I love using it as a player, but I'm also, I work for InStat, so I'm kind of a junkie, but I think it's just, yeah.
I think you hit a good note too on the youth and younger girls and younger boys too. I don't think, parents nowadays are really into filming their kids and make sure they're having all the resources possible to develop and everything. Like, I'm sure you did this too, Emma, but I played soccer, I played golf, I played baseball, I played everything else, basketball. Like, have your kids be kids. And then when they get to a certain age, to now then focus on becoming an elite type of players. And I think there's a value in not necessarily tracking everything under a certain age and people to judge you for certain stats. There's no point on this. And I think that stats using the right way is really good. And it could also be detrimental when it's used in maybe a wrong way, I don't know. Of course, it's going to be used in contract signing around the day and whatnot, but it should be used as a 9 years old type of scenario to, value why a player is not playing or not. They should all be playing at that age anyways. So that's kind of like the point I wanted to touch there.
Yeah, I think we're rambling a bit, but I want to touch on one more thing. Just made me think, kind of in a thought process now. But, I think not just in terms of, the coach and their team, but I think with, our companies is developing like a video library so that coaches can go in there and, I think we've learned a lot about, doing a lot of things over Zoom or virtually, and, like scouting and recruiting through these platforms is huge. I think it'll be a huge way for players who maybe wouldn't get that exposure, in their small town or, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And we can get that video and we can break it down and, coaches can go on our platforms and kind of view these players. I think that's, a great way to continue to grow and give these players, these opportunities. So
definitely. Even if it's just time on ice and they watch the shifts, that's all they need.
Yeah.
Oh, Emma and Karell, I want to direct this to you. How have your perspectives changed, on data and everything in hockey since starting your positions at Instat and Sportlogic?
I'll let you go first on this.
Yeah, I honestly just before in college, I learned a lot about that stuff because we had someone, like full time breaking that stuff down, and then they would use the video in such great detail that I learned a lot about it in college. But there was never a platform that I went on personally until, learning about Instat and starting to work with Instat. And it's just like, once you know it exists, it's crazy. Like, and you can dive into it and see like, okay, this is really cool. And this is something that is so new, and it's exciting to see where it can take our game. And I'll let you continue.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think it's the same thing. All we had with our video coach or video, we called it coding, but they didn't code. They were just like breaking down video, right? Now we're exposed to true coding and everything in our platforms and stuff that we work with nowadays. And I agree with you, Emma. I never saw anything before, or like you said, access the platform. And now that I work with our tool, ICE, and the amount of stuff that we have in it and the data that we actually track and provide it's a whole new game. Like I was talking about missing context earlier when you're just looking at certain aspects or certain events. When you're looking at both sides and you're generating, or if it's just time on ice, or if it's everything in between, from turnovers to zone exits to breakouts to pass receptions, which are 1,000 in no game or all games pretty much. So you can see where players are getting open. You can see tendencies. You can develop playlists that allows you to help players very rapidly. And to be honest, like the amount of stats that we can gather from Instats or Sportlogic, and what we can provide to our game, it will benefit anyone and everyone. And I think that my look on it was, I didn't necessarily believe in stats, to now I see the benefit of stats because I've chatted with people that are using it on the daily, and because they use it purposefully into developing players or into promoting or having true insights in the media, and for articles, and they're talking and supporting themselves with a true, like, it's not just an opinion anymore. There's a little bit of support that comes with it. It's just like doing a research paper by any means, and doing your research or your prep work prior. You have these numbers that are unbiased, that are being tracked, and that you should be using. So like I said, as long as it's used the right way, and now I would say that since I've seen it and I used it, I truly believe in it, or way more than I used to, that's for sure.
So Colleen, since you're in that decision-making position, and this is like the biggest hurdle, it seems like, in men's hockey in particular too, how do you get that organizational buy-in to embrace data-driven decision-making, and how important is it to dedicate resources to an organization?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's coming, right? People are good. I've been in this sort of change management my entire life. So even when I was in software and outside of sports, it's like bringing in a new technology that's supposed to make your business easier to run or your decisions easier to make. And, just like Karell, like you get that resistance that's like, how's that ever going to help me? Like, I don't understand, so it's really about things like this, conferences like this, data that you guys are going to put out. I don't know if this will be publicly available like later, but like bringing, this type of information forward and just saying, hey, like, I mean, let's get our heads out of the sand and take a look at what's available, because it's going to make a difference. And from a business perspective, I think that the data is huge, or will be, and is in some cases, for fan engagement. I think fans want to know, like, the stats. They want, like, when they're watching a game, I think there's so much that we've seen sort of, like vignettes of what's coming. It's not mainstream yet, like seeing stats on the screen as a player's carrying the puck, right? Like things like that. I think fans, so from a business perspective, I think this type of data, some of the data sets that will come out of this will be huge just from a business perspective, never mind from a performance perspective.
I agree. If I can just tag along on this one, I agree with that, because it allows we know the game, we played it, we have an impact or an experience that's behind it, but it allows anyone that's actually just walking by to see, like, oh my God, this guy's going at that speed, or that shot was coming, like just simple stats. But then at the same time too, it allows, and this year with everything we've done on the PWHPA side, there's a partnership with SportLogic, and we track the game exactly the way we track the NHL games. And we did it live for any broadcast games, as well as like post-game or pre-game for the other games. And NBC used our stats and provided the tables like they do on Sportsnet or like they do on NBC or TSN. And I thought that was, to me, it was like a proud moment, because I obviously helped this whole thing. And I, like Emma, we want to push the women's side like no other. And I was just like, this is exactly what women's hockey needs. And I know Hockey Canada is all on board with all this too. And we follow any worlds or any data that they have. And as a president, I assume you have to take into consideration some of these numbers too. And not only to see it in the media, but to be able to use it in choosing some players or having good conversations. I mean, we hear it from GMs and everything. They do ask us for custom reports or for things that they need to have. And, you know, players are not necessarily using it, but these are kind of tools, and you're just better equipped to make decisions down the road. And to the fan base, they're now better equipped to look forward for little things that they wouldn't necessarily look forward to. Or like, hey, picture this, the Montreal Canadiens readjust their PK and they did this, and this is what it did. It actually cut down the receptions in the slot, and it cut down the risk. Like, you give them the insights that we see that comes naturally to Emma and I and Colleen, but to the rest of the fans, I don't think it comes to them really as easily, or they hear it and then they want to talk about this, right? So like you said, I think the engagement is huge, and the more we do in the media for the women's game, the better it gets. And that was like a huge highlight for me. And because of that too, and all the attractions we did for Chicago, New York, St. Louis, and then the Calgary showcase, we'll be able to provide data to this actual conference as well too. And not to, anyways, it's a thing that my colleague is doing later on this afternoon, Sean, and building, you know, graphs and everything via Tableau. And I just love it because it showcases women's hockey in general. Doesn't matter what league it's on or whatever it's for. I think that in the end, we're all looking in the same and kind of direction to push this game. And again, engagement and fan engagement, they love it. We know it, they view it. So giving them a bit more to look forward to get, just like the NHL fans are getting, I think it's just it's a no-brainer, and we absolutely need to do that.
Yes, agreed.
Okay. So I want to ask all three of you, what is your typical post-game review after playing or after watching a game? Is there anything in particular you look forward to, you know, seek out for your game, or, you know, Colleen for the Pride? And is there any stat, you know, if you had to blue sky a post-game report, any stat that you haven't seen that you'd want to see on there?
So I haven't even watched the Pride game yet, except for one. So I'll go ahead and defer to these guys who are in it. And
we just check goal against. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. You want to make sure you're not there. No, I think post game, you know, you want to make sure that you're not part of. Well, goal against is one thing, but it's not the truth. It's like you want to see the block shots. You want to see the shots that you're about to take in. That you want to, you know, to our extent, a little bit more of like the amount of time that you were successfully able to enter and get a shot on net or towards the net, or a scoring chance was created. And on the D side, how many times were you in good positions, basically? And stats that comes with it are more so like the block shots, are also the block passes, block anything really, stick checks that we have as well too. And one thing that I look, just because I have the stats and I can look at it, the loose puck recoveries one in the D zone and in the O zone too. I love to see what team has the advantage and why as well too. And who's actually, as a player, able to recover more puck or keep them alive. I think that's a game that's not necessarily exposed as much as any other aspects of our game. And I think that's one that have a big impact on how the games will actually go in the end.
Yeah, I think I try to personally, I like to focus on maybe things like my shot or my pass was blocked or my shot was blocked, similar to you, or, you know, lost battles, because it's like, those are things where I personally would want to focus on to try to improve. Like, obviously you can focus on the good things all the time. And of course we do that when we want to feel good about ourselves. But I think, you know, post game, and especially if you have a game turnaround time, a quicker turnaround time, you got to focus on those small, you know, minute things, and kind of take those with you into the next game. I think those are cool things that, we never used to have before we had, these programs. So it's really cool to actually see those. And then, you can see the video and all that stuff attached to that stat and that number. So those are probably things that, I focus on more personally, but there's so many stats and I don't even know which one I would add that we don't already have. There's so many that it's almost you don't need to add more right now. I'm sure we always will, but yeah.
I can say that from like a scouting and recruiting perspective, like all those stats that they're throwing out are the things that before, as players, as coaches, we knew when there was a turnover that led, or a created turnover that led to a goal, right? But other people don't. So to have that like statistic available, block shots, if someone's leading the league in block shots, that says a little something about what type of player they are, right? And so those types of things that are they're super important, but they're not goals, assists, plus minus, like, save percentage, like all those stats that we're used to seeing, but they're from a scouting and recruiting perspective, they're remarkably important. They're going to be if they're not already.
Yeah. In the game, when it happens, exactly what happened. And those are things you continue to think about because in that moment, like it impacted that play or, so that's why you want to rewatch it. Like I can replay, a goal in my head and all that stuff, but to actually rewatch those things, like you wait till that moment after the game to watch it. And now you have to go through the whole video and kind of find those points and be like, okay, I think it was around this time. And it's like, you can just click on that and like, within a minute, you can be watching that play that, you could have done something different or what could I have done different or, whatever it is. So.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about more so watching the vids than anything else. Cause you want to understand exactly what happened. Like, even if I see 5, I'm like, okay, like I want to see the 5s. And then you watch the 5 missed block shot or whatever that got through, or, you look at also stats that you were talking about shots and everything. And the shots that are actually being taken from the inner slots or the slots, like those players are actually getting open every time. It's not just the passer that's making that pass happen. It's like that player is good and it's good. She is amazing because she gets open every time or she's making herself available. So there's like locations that are also attached to these stats that are providing you that second insights that back then we weren't necessarily getting to, there's all of those points now. That's why the stats is better. That's why it's actually providing true insights as well too. So it's we don't watch too much, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's the from the media perspective, that's definitely the biggest misconception is just how much video is tied to looking at anything. That's what sparks your questions. But to end, I just want to ask all three of you, how can analysts make players and teams more aware of the work and the resources that are available to them?
I think using our platforms. I think with Instat, we've been doing a good job of, we post stuff on social media, whether it's an NHL player stats or, an NWHL player stats. We wanted that to be out there and our partnerships too with leagues. So I think just continuing to use the 3 of us, use our platforms, but it's encouraging like your players and your teams to do that. Because I think eventually, every team is going to be using, our platforms. It's just kind of a matter of time. But I think, utilizing social media and our platforms is kind of the way to get that and spread that.
Yeah. And I'd say like the other part we can do also always keeping it, but you can compare, you can showcase talented athletes based on their numbers too, and everything. We can provide social media inputs left and right, even from our personal ones, from our company ones, for our leagues ones. I think there's good in anything. And also remind people that stats is not everything as well too, although it's a great tool. I think it's a great tool at the highest level. And I just want to harp on that again. Parents do not get too involved or hooked on stats. And I know there's maybe not parents here or anything. Maybe there is. I just want to mention it though, that, there's a value in me that's like, oh, this 8 years old, just watch his shift. Don't watch any of his stats, right? Like get this person to be scouted, and true coach can watch this thing, but don't evaluate your own kid. Like give him the chance to be a kid as well too. I think that's one big thing that I don't want stats to impact negatively. We see the good, and I think we want to keep it that way. And again, I think we're doing a good job at getting it to the women's side. And I know our company will do the same, or has been doing that. And putting an effort in that. I know Instat will do it as well too, and it's just going to keep growing.
Alyssa's back. I think that's the equivalent to the music starting. The award. So, I'd echo what they say. And then, the visuals that you guys put out, like the analysts put out, I think visuals for social media are awesome. Graphs, charts, like that tell stories, sort of overlays on players would be neat too. And I think it's just marketing. It's going to take some effort from all angles. And you've got three of us here that are clearly passionate about it and coming from all different places and have all different networks. So, maybe it starts with us starting to, share more of what you guys are putting out there and,
sure.
getting the word out. So, that's my take on it.
Sorry. I think that Colleen kind of mentioned it, but any diagram, we all see the shots or we all see the speeds, we all see these things, but stuff that you can find out and put it out there in graphs. And obviously if there's a link to, you can't link it to video, but anyone and everyone would love the highlight that comes with it. But I think that a lot of you guys are actually doing it at this point. I've seen shot maps, I've seen stuff on the NWHL players. And I think that if we can grow it even to the, I want to see more about the Australian League. I want to see more about all of it. I think we can provide even more on different sphere of the women's game. I think that would be something I'd like to see more. And obviously the men's side is, the expected goals and everything. And if we can provide that to you guys on the women's side, I think you'd get some stuff today that you can play around with, but I would love to see that for sure.
I know from Instat's perspective, next year will be a huge year for that. I think right now, we're getting those teams and those leagues on board. And I think next year, we'll have that much more data to show the public. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah. And I just reiterate, charts and graphs, visuals. I think people can really take a lot of information in with visuals and it makes it easy and helps it click. And once it starts to sink in, they want more. Mm-hmm.